Welcome, everybody. I'm Michael Ettlinger. I direct the Carsey School of Public Policy here at the University of New Hampshire. If you want to know anything more about our excellent School of Public Policy, there's some literature on a table out here. Today we're privileged to have Governor John Kasich here and to have Tom Rath to discuss his new book with him. They'll have a discussion, then we'll open up for questions, and then about 15 minutes or so after the questions period, the governor has agreed to sign some books out here. So I just got mine signed. And there are also books for sale, as you probably noticed coming in. Wait a minute. So first I'll introduce Tom Rath, and then he'll take it from there. Just a very abbreviated version of Tom's bio is that he's the former Attorney General of New Hampshire. He's the former Director of the National Legal Services Corporation. He's chaired successful U.S. Senate campaigns. He's been a senior advisor for several presidential campaigns. He's been a delegate to 9 Republican national conventions. He was twice the Republican Party National Committeeman for New Hampshire. He's the founder of a very successful law and government relations firm. I could go on, but I said I was going to do the abbreviated version. I would say the highlight of his career is that he is now on the Carsey School Advisory Board, which we're very grateful. There you go. So with that, I will turn it over to Tom to introduce the governor and take it from there.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you all for coming out this afternoon. I'm going to be brief in the introduction, and we get into the program, but my friend John Kasich is the former governor of Ohio, just finished 2 very successful terms. Before that, he had a very interesting and fast career for many years as a leader in the House of Representatives. He then took a hiatus from actual elective office and did lots of stuff both in the financial world and on television. We all remember fondly his Fox television show that was on. I think probably 2 people saw it at some point. And then he returned to become governor and led Ohio to one of the most groundbreaking economic recoveries of any state. And today it is prosperous. It has got full employment. It's got all kinds of companies coming in that take advantage of the environment that Governor Kasich created. I had the good fortune. The last presidential cycle, at the end when they needed somebody to drive the car to hook on with John and Bruce Berkey and the gang, and we had one of the best campaigns. We didn't quite make it, but we were the last man standing. We beat Trump, and one of the highlights of what we did, I think, and the governor can talk about it, was our time here. We kind of reinvented the concept of town meetings. We did all over the state. We did them all day long, everywhere we went. We got tremendous reaction, and he came from really being an asterisk to finishing second here and continue a campaign that resonated across the country. Hallmark of that campaign was how people treat each other, the respect that people need to show each other, and the respect that government needs to have for those it governs. It was it was a lot of fun, but B, we talked about the right things to people who cared about it, and we just ran out of innings. But it was a great thing to be part of, and I appreciate it, and I welcome you back.
Thank you.
So
just a word about Tom. So Tom did join the campaign. It was a big get for us. I don't remember how far into it was it, Bruce, when we got him. Okay, and bringing him on, Tom really is, if you're going to come to New Hampshire and you're going to compete, you want to have Tom Rath. And I remember the day we got it and how happy we were about it. And he was really not just an advisor, but he was somebody I trusted as a friend. We did 106 town hall meetings in New Hampshire, which I think set the record. I don't think anybody has ever done that many. I don't know that anybody will do that many again, but it was terrific. And I love being here because, as I like to tell people, I spent a year in Iowa 1 week, but it's so, the problem with Iowa, frankly, is that it's so scattered. So here in New Hampshire, it's a postage stamp, and people take it very seriously. And so you go to these things all over the state, and people take the measure of the person. And now we are all subjected to this torturous thing that happens every couple months called a debate, if that's what it is. And I've always argued, if you really want to know who should be president, force them to go to New Hampshire and do about 50 town hall meetings and let people take the measure of the person, because you can't determine who a leader is going to be on the basis of a quip or some smart aleck thing that you dreamt up before you got on the stage, so you could generate some publicity so people will put you on the morning news so you then can go and get more donors. I mean, that's kind of what the process is. It's a flawed process that actually drives people to the extremes. So here was a wonderful place, and I've been back, and I've got friends here, and I like being here. It's a great state, and it'll always be special in my heart. In fact, I love it here, and I love the people here.
We're glad to have you. Let me talk a little bit about what you've been doing. You'll never not be peripatetic. You will always be in motion. But you've been traveling around the country a lot. You have written a book that you want to talk a little bit about today. But what is that travel around the country? What have you picked up out there, and how did that inspire the book?
In some ways, I'm actually busier now than when I was governor, and being governor of a seventh largest state in the country, 11.5 million people, takes a lot of time, but I'm very busy. And so right now, what's interesting about where I am is I think I will have completed, I'm somewhere close to 100 appearances on CNN, and I have 1 million followers on Twitter, and I do a lot of Instagramming and all those things. So it's
you don't tweet the first thing in the morning.
So it's usually not the first thing. Although I tweeted today about a United States senator who said, in regard to Nancy Pelosi, she wants to impeach the president, and says, "Wouldn't it suck to be dumb?" I mean, like I say, it's almost become a contagion now. We belittle, we bully, we demean. It's a terrible thing. But because of the exposure, that it gives people an opportunity to come and talk to me. They see me, whether it's on the plane or in the airport or in a train or wherever it is. And I consider myself fortunate that they come and they're nice and they say things, they communicate things. And then I've had an opportunity through my speaking career to travel all over the country, and I don't go anywhere where people don't have an opportunity in a setting like this to ask questions. I mean, I was just in a place called Walnut Creek, just outside San Francisco. There are about well over 1,000 people there, and they all get a chance to question. That's Walnut Creek's adults. I go to a lot of universities where students are given the right to question. So I get a chance to hear and to think about what it is that might be on their minds, Tom. And what I consistently hear is really, how do we knock this stuff off? All the name-calling, disruption, sort of a code of conduct that we've never seen before. Right. And I find most people saying they don't like that this is not what our country is all about. And so then, of course, I've had my book tour, and my book tour has been something I've thought about for a long time, which is power comes from the bottom up, and that we wring our hands about who's the president and who's in the legislature. And it's like I come up, I ask them about the legislature, and I kind of chuckle about it, because presidential elections mean a lot, but congressional elections and legislative elections, it's like, meet the new boss, same as the old boss. This is the most important election of our lifetime, only to find out nothing's really changed. And so I've become convinced, as I have for really over 20 years, that the power in our country comes from us, individuals, realizing our gifts, our talents, and what we can do to change the world. And so rather than, and there's some things that we ought to do. We ought to put ourselves in other people's shoes. Think about their lives and what a challenge their lives are. Or think about think about the fact that we're all made in the image of God. For those that happen to believe in God, I happen to be one. They deserve respect. Like, get out of your silo. You know, don't just consume things that you agree with, but think about other things. It makes you more interesting, and it gives you a more open mind. And think about what it is, because everybody in this room is made special. No one has ever been made like you before, and no one will ever be like you again. So you have a special role in our society, and you're like part of a mosaic. So figure out what you can do to change the world. And some people do really big things. You know, this Greta Thunberg, you know, who stood outside the Swedish parliament and created a global movement on the environment. Okay, but then there's people that just know how to go next door, Tom, and take care of a widow, a person who's just recently been widowed. I mean, do they change the world? I happen to think they do. So Martin Luther King says, if you can't do big things then, or great things, then do little things in a great way. I happen to believe that. So I'm optimistic about the future of our country, because if I can convince enough people that the power and the influence of America and the heart and soul of America resides in you, each and every one here and across our country, we're going to be healthy again, and we'll restore that basic code of conduct.
How do we change that tone? How did I know we have to do it one at a time, but this permeation of anger that we sense on 24-hour cable is overwhelming.
It is one at a time. First of all, most people don't watch that stuff. Okay? But it is one at a time. So as long as I've known you, you can get exasperated, but I've never seen you lower yourself to attacking other people or questioning their worth, or you know, if somebody that doesn't have your political philosophy, you kind of chuckle about it and life goes on. But everybody wants to say, well, how can we change it? Well, it changes with us, whether we're at a church, a synagogue, whether we're at work, or whether we're at a party. You know, people, it starts with us. I mean, that's where it always is. And so how do we change it? We just say to people, no, I'm not going there with you. I'm sorry. And by the way, you know, I don't agree with you, but I can respect your idea or whatever. You know, that's the way we have to conduct ourselves, because at the end of the time, at the end of life, I spend time actually thinking about my eternal destiny and the ultimate judgment that's going to come my way. And I'd like to be remembered as, you know, as showing respect to somebody that is the way I want them to respect me. And I want them to care about me the same way that I'm obligated to care about them. This is pretty simple stuff. I think it's the history of our country, too, isn't it? When we read about the Depression, or when we read about World War II, and that's going back years, of course, but people were selfless and they cared about one another. But if you think about Las Vegas, where people went to a country show, and they were dancing and having a great time, and all of a sudden they heard these fireworks, and they look around and there's people lying dead next to them, being shot by some murderer out of a hotel room. If you read the stories, if you read those stories, there were people that threw themselves in front of others at the risk of being killed themselves, and people who put their life on the line to try to get people and load them into the ambulance. I mean, we are by nature, if we look for the better nature of ourselves, we are not dividers. We don't want to live like that. It is not a pleasant place to be. And Thanksgiving's coming up, and I'd like to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving, and no talk about Donald Trump or Democrats or anything else. You'll have a much better Thanksgiving. Turn on the Macy's Day Parade. You'll have a great time.
How do we, John, change that and get us back to celebrating those things and making that more the norm than the out of the ordinary?
You know, I hate to make this sound boring, because maybe it is. But to me, it's exciting that each of us have it in our hands to bring about a change in that. What do we think? Somebody's going to come riding into the University of New Hampshire and all of a sudden change everything? New Hampshire's, the university here rises or falls on the basis of the faculty and the students. It doesn't rest on somebody else. Nobody's coming in to save us, folks. We have to save ourselves. I mean, I don't know what we're waiting on. When did we get to the point where we got to wait for somebody else to fix our problems? No, we fix them. And to me, that's empowering. That's not depressing. That's empowering. And, it's, you know, so when we see somebody that's acting inappropriately, we don't have to yell at them, but, you know what they say? You're a better example by what you do than what you say. And if we behave a certain way, it will become contagious. The same way that when people act in an ugly way, that becomes contagious. I've had a principal tell me that bullying has become an approved of function in his school. That some of the kids can't be disciplined because the parents say, well, that's right. I mean, that's nuts, okay? So it's up to us. Hell, that's the title of the book. Okay?
Well, that transitions into the book, which is, let's talk a little bit about it, and what I think we have a sense of what prompted you to write it, but what are the kind of things you talk about in there, and how does that apply to where we are now?
Well, if we assume for a second, okay, that all of us are made special. Now, I happen to believe that. If all of us are unique, and that doesn't go away as we get older, number one. Number two, if we think about the purpose of life, these are things I really care about. What is the meaning of life? It's been debated, Tom, by who? By Plato and Aristotle and Camus and Thomas Aquinas and Augustine. They all debate what's the meaning of life. We all do it. You know, when you're a student at UNH and it's 3 o'clock in the morning and you've had too much to drink, you believe me, that's what you talk about with your roommates. Did you? The meaning of life.
Oh, no, I never
Yes, you did. And we also talk about the meaning of life when we go to a funeral. We talk about the meaning of life when we go to a wedding. What's life all about? So if we realize that we're made special, and we realize at some point we're going to depart this place, then the question is, what are we going to do with what we've been given to change the world? And so a lot of people say, well, students sitting in here, he says we need to change the world. Well, I'm nobody special. I'm just, so was Greta Thunberg when she stood up in front of a parliament with a sign. Here, I care about the planet, okay? And now, all over the world, it's got young people jumping up and down about the environment, and God bless her, what she's done. But there are a lot of other people who have done things that we've never heard about. Little girl, 5 years old. His name is Florence, and they call her Flo. And there was a hurricane coming up the coast and called Hurricane Florence. And she told her mom, people are going to really not like me, Mom, because that's a horrible storm with a bad name, and that's my name. So I need to go get Band-Aids for people who are going to be hurt. So she conned her 4-year-old brother into pulling her around the neighborhood with a wagon, collecting Band-Aids. Well, at the end of the story, and I know because I talked to her mother, the entire garage was filled from top to bottom with supplies. Then a guy with a tractor-trailer came by and took all the supplies to North Carolina. Now that's some little girl. Or this kid, I used to give medals out to people who were heroes. I called them, you know, they were special heroes in Ohio. And I gave one to an 8-year-old kid whose grandmother was going to give him an Xbox. And he said, he was raised basically by his grandmother, had come out of a homeless shelter because his parents were in and out of jail. They were drug addicts. And he said, Grandma, I don't want the Xbox. Let's take the money and buy blankets for people who were in the homeless shelter, because I know what it's like to be in there and to be cold, and I'd never had a blanket. So they went out and bought a blanket. People in the neighborhood, in the area, found out. They sent more blankets. They didn't even know what to do with them all at the homeless shelter. He got his Xbox, by the way, ultimately. But I mean, does that kid, when he was 8 years old, did he change the world? I have no doubt that he did. So we need to think about ourselves, and sometimes people can do absolutely incredible things, wonderful, big, giant things, but I don't believe we measure them either. Some have more impact than others, but one isn't better than another one. And so, Tom, my view is you want to change, to talk about political stuff, you want to change a gun law, show up on the grounds of the State House. You want to get people interested in the environment. You want to change the civil rights laws. I mean, all these changes have come from the bottom up, and somehow we've lost sight. No big single social change ever happened in America that didn't come from the bottom up. None. And so somehow we've forgotten that, and banding together, we can create, as Bobby Kennedy used to say, the tiny ripples that can lead to a huge wave of change.
And you go through some of that in the
book.
Yeah,
it's kind of spelled out. It's a handbook for people who want to get their power back. A handbook. I like it. No, I like it because it's really cool, and it's what I believe, and it's what I know is true, and it's an antidote to all the vitriol and division that we see.
I don't know whether you'll remember it, but we did all these town meetings. But the idea of people getting engaged and caring about it, I think you have to present that opportunity. Say, I'm going to listen to you. We're going to create opportunities to do it. And I have done a lot of these over the years, but I particularly remember one with you. And we were in a little town of Springfield, New Hampshire, which is right at the base of Lake Sunapee. And we went there very, very early on the morning, and it was brutally cold. And I think something had happened. Either we had been at a debate out of state the night before, but everybody had flown all night to get to New Hampshire. And when I got up to Sunapee, first thing I saw was former Senator Gordon Humphrey. And again, about 7 o'clock in the morning, he was putting signs in the streets outside of that tiny town hall. And I went in there, and it had to be maybe after Iowa, because all the national press was there that day. And I don't think the place held more than 50 people, but we had a crowd in there, and they kept coming and coming and coming. It was so cold, and I said, what moves these people to get involved like this, to really feel that it's worth their while to come to this and to get a chance to talk to somebody? And it struck me that it was because somebody was going to listen. And they were going to say, all right, I understand that you got a point of view. I'm going to respect it. I'm going to tell you what I think. You may not remember that one, but
well, there were a lot of them here. You know, I remember a man had a son who was very ill, and he came behind the stage and started crying and telling me about his boy, and the kid ended up recovering, he came later to say he'd had the surgeries and the kid was going to be fine. I had a lot of that kid that wanted me to give him a hug down at Clemson.
Oh, that would.
Yeah, those are things that really stood out. But here's what I mean, if I could, and we all get tired. And look, I'm the farthest thing from being perfect in any of this. We're all hypocrites. I'm number one. But everybody's got things that they're really proud of, really happy about, and they've got things that are really, really tough. Whether it's a son or a daughter that's having a problem with mental illness, whether it's an illness to their mother. I just talked to a guy yesterday, his mom's been diagnosed in a bad way. I mean, there's so much of that. And there's also joy. My daughter just made an A on a physics test. She wasn't sure how she was going to do. Pure joy for Dad, and I know pure joy for her. You've got to look inside of a human being and not just see, you know, what the hell they're wearing, but what's cooking inside of them. And if you do that and you slow down, that's another thing, another recommendation in this book. Slow down your life. And when you slow down, you begin to hear a little voice inside of you that tells you what it is you're supposed to do. If all you're doing is, you know, think about a beautiful ride here in New Hampshire. You drive too fast, you don't see anything. But when you slow down, it's amazing what you can see. Slow down our lives. Get out of our own silos. Put yourself in somebody else's shoes. Think about what you're supposed to do. This is what empowerment is. And when you find out what you're supposed to do, as Tom has all of his lifetime, it's joyous. It is. I mean, it's joy, right? You have joy all the time. He's just...
Every day's a party.
No? Well, I mean, you've got your ups and downs, but you find real satisfaction when you know what it is you're supposed to do, and particularly when what you're doing somehow benefits somebody else. It's just, it's intuitive to us, or it's natural to us to know when I've got a buddy sitting right here in the front row. One of his great joys is helping young people to find their future. You can get joy out of it and satisfaction. I've seen it over and over and over again. I was on the phone with somebody in New York on the way here, and I put him on the phone with this lady because her son is going to school in Ohio and is looking for something. All I have to do is hand him the phone. Now she's got his cell phone, he's got the kid's cell phone, he's got her cell phone, and he's going to work at it. And you know what? It makes him feel good. And it adds up. It sounds like I guess some kind of a preacher or something when I say these things, but I want you to think about them. You know, I didn't do this to write. I don't need to write a book. I don't need to write another book. I've already written 4 of them. I didn't need to do another one. I don't need to do this. I'm doing it because I feel it so deeply about the fact that we can change lives and we can change our country.
Sometimes I want to say we're better than this.
Yeah.
And I think what I'm hearing you say is you agree we just have to allow or give ourselves permission to show that.
Yeah. You know, and just listen to other people. It's amazing what you'll hear.
I have to ask one question or else they'll throw me out of here, which they probably will anyways, but I live in Concord. And after this is over, I have to drive to Concord.
All right.
State House is in Concord. Do you want to take a ride with me?
Well, take a ride to Concord. No, I'm not taking a, look, I'm not going to Concord.
About that.
Okay. Okay, I think I know what you're driving at. Look, all over the country, whether it's in airports or whether it doesn't matter, whether I'm eating dinner or it just happened in the hallway. You know, first of all, they always say, well, you need to run. And then they go, well, I wish you were president. Okay, I hear it all the time. How many people is that? I don't know. I mean, if it was these giant, magnificent numbers, this whole place would be filled and there wouldn't be any room. So obviously not that many people worked up. But I appreciate you all coming. But look, when people have asked me about this, I've said that I needed to find a path. Running for president is not something you just decide you're just going to do. You have to figure out many different parts of what it takes to run for president. So I tried this in 2000, and unbeknownst to me, the people who had talked me into it really didn't think that I had the stuff to put this together. But they wanted me to go out there and do it because they thought a trial run would teach me about what it would take to have a legitimate run for president, which we then had in 2016. We started with nothing. I mean, I had less than 1% name ID. We came here, we finished second, got buried in the South, but kept going and made it all the way through in the North, and then you know, we couldn't get there. And there are a lot of things that it takes to get there. And you have to have a legitimate shot. You have to have a path. And every time I have run, I've always thought that I would win. But I always have told people, if you don't think you can win, then you shouldn't run. And so what it looks like for me at this point in time is there is no path. Now, we're only 8 days from the filing deadline here, and I don't intend to file because I don't see a path. Now, I don't know how many of you have ever been hiking, but I go hiking with my wife a lot. And we always want to get up somewhere up there. We're never satisfied with where we are. We always want to go higher. And when you are hiking, you need to figure out the path to get up there. And I can tell you, if you try to climb up where there is no path, you don't have a good result. It's never something that works out. So I don't see a path at this point in time, which is why I don't intend to file. Now, what does that mean for the future? Well, what I also know about hiking is when you walk down a path, you might not, when you walk down a trail, you might not see the path. But around the corner, sometimes, there it is. And then you know how to climb. So at this point in time, I don't see it. And I don't know that there will be one in the future. There might be a path that I stumble across sometime soon. Or it might take longer for me to find a path. And perhaps there'll never be one, but I'm always a person that's looking to go and do something and contribute. And, you know, I don't know what will happen in this election cycle. I know this, in the next election cycle, I will be younger than the 3 leading candidates who are running for president today in the Democratic Party. So that's always, you know, a possibility. One of the things that troubles me about saying this is I don't want people to be like, you know, he let us down, he doesn't want to do it. You know, I've been in public life, held public office for 30 years, and I've never walked away from a good fight. But, you know, you've got to make sure, Tom, when you're going to engage in this, you don't want to put your friends, your family, and your dearest supporters in a position of where you can't be successful. And for right now, I don't see it, and I don't think it would be fair to my wife, my kids, my friends, the loyal supporters. And one of the reasons I wanted to come to New Hampshire is because this place was filled with people who had hope for me, and I don't want them to be discouraged, because there's a lot to do, each of us to do, to follow our natural instincts. And as for my political future, I don't know. I know this, and I want you all to understand this. I vest a lot of what I do in what I hear from the big guy, and the big guy's not Tom Rath, okay? I listen to the big guy, and my ears are open, and I'm staying visible. I'm going to keep my voice out there, whether it's with Twitter, maybe it's with television, maybe it's with some sort of a radio show. I don't really know, but I'm going to stay out there, and as long as I can. So it's as of today, this is not going to happen, but you never know. One thing we love about politics is what's true today is usually not true about 10 minutes from now.
Well,
that's where we are.
Whenever you decide, we'll still be here. You know? There's still going to be a primary, and this is where you belong to start. You know that, right? Let's finish up before we do questions. More on that sense of community that has always sort of sustained this country and has driven a lot of the good things. You believe, I think, from the book, that that's still there, and people need to just assert it more.
You can see it all over the place. I mean, whether it's the Cajun Navy that floats around, when they're rescuing people off the top of a house who are flooded, they don't say, "Now, who did you vote? Did you vote for Trump? Or are you a Democrat?" Or nobody does that. It's natural. The other funny thing is when we engage in activities at a food bank or whatever, it's amazing how we begin to know other people as people and not as political or intellectual or philosophical or ideological enemies. You know, we begin to find common purpose. And back when I was in Congress especially, you know, I loved working with people that thought differently than I did, but I would find something that we agreed upon. I would not find something, you know, spend my time arguing with them. I would say, okay, you feel we leave that behind, but what is it we can do together? And as a result of that, look, I was the chairman of the committee that balanced the budget with the Clinton administration. I've made major reform of the Department of Defense with Democrat liberals. And then take Ohio, you know, I expanded Medicaid. I mean, we're all now finding how smart that was. And people say, well, that took great courage. It didn't take any courage. I'm going to have 600,000 people who are going to get health care. How would I not do it? So, and a lot of people were pleased with it. Some were very angry. The other thing about being a leader, you know, that old thing is that anytime you do something good, there's always going to be somebody that's going to hammer you for it. What does it say? No good deed goes unpunished. And that's true, because you upset the status quo. But that's okay. Walk a lonely road. When they're yelling at you, you know you're on the right track.
Well, I think you're on the right track, and I hope you will continue. We're going to take some questions, but
good.
Thank you very much for what you've done so far.
All right. Yes, sir.
Yeah, there are microphones if you want to come up, but
go ahead. Just yell it out.
Yeah.
I'm having a little hard time understanding. You're going around the country, doing this great thing of what you like to do, and what you have here is the church choir. You don't have, this message is not making to the general public. And when you ran for president, you came closest to defeating Trump. And if a person like you or me, or retired senator from Tennessee, somebody like that doesn't run, then who? I mean, if you want to get the message out, run. Then you'll...
Well, first of all, yeah. Yeah, well, I would say that I want you to don't wait on me, be free to go and support and help whoever you want. for me, I don't believe that that in the long run is effective for me to get into something that where I can't have success. I think in some ways it dilutes the message. That's my judgment. I mean, people can disagree with that, but of course I'm the one that has to make up my mind. And I don't think the only thing that I want to really talk to people about is politics. Frankly, politics bores me. Doesn't it bore you these days? And so I want to get people to think about other things that they can do that can be effective. And I think in the role I'm in now, I will tell you this, sir, during the presidential campaign, nobody heard anything from me in South Carolina or Alabama or Mississippi. I mean, I had no voice down there. And let's not exaggerate at the end, you know, exactly what happened, but I did leave an impression, a good impression. And I want to continue to leave a good impression about the things I care about the most, but that doesn't necessarily mean in the 21st century that requires me holding public office. If I thought that there was a way for me to have a path to be successful, you know, then I'd be willing to do it. But if I don't really believe that there's a way at this point in time, then it doesn't make any sense for me to try to do that because it'll be futile. But again, I can't tell you what the future is going to bring, but I'm not going to disappear. But I appreciate what you're saying. Yes, sir.
You got 15% of the vote in the primary in Oregon. You and Ted Cruz got about the same amount, but you packed a gymnasium. There were maybe 500 people there. That's because you were a candidate for president. In Oregon, people plant pear trees, and they don't get any fruit for 4 or 5 years. If you were a candidate for president saying that the Republican Party has gone astray, you'd get some votes and you'd probably lose. You know what? You will lose this year, but you will plant a tree that in 4 years will be taken a lot more seriously than if you bow out now. You have an opportunity to tell the Republican Party that they have a choice, and you will plant a seed.
Mm-hmm. I think I've planted seeds for 30 years in my life, and I'm still planting seeds. I mean, because I'm not running for president. Look, I was just in Walnut Creek with, what do we have out there, Doug? A couple, 1,000, you know, 1,200, 1,300 people. I mean, I'm planting seeds when I'm doing that. It's not like I'm like burrowed in Westerville, Ohio, not doing anything. I appreciate what you're saying. At the same time, I have to decide what gives me the most effective way to communicate. And I now believe the path I've chosen is the right one. But again, sir, I have to tell you, I don't really know what the future will bring and whether I will see a way in which I can be effective, more effective, and be successful. But I don't determine that now. And look, I know there are going to be people who are going to be, you know, why doesn't he do it and all that other stuff. I've done a lot, okay? And I have wife and kids at home. And if they say, Daddy, do you think you can win? I say, no, I'm going to go tree planting.
Where do you think trees come from?
You know what? The best way to plant a tree is have some guy drive up on a truck and just put the full tree in. We did that at the fairgrounds. But no, sir, look, this is the 21st century. Here's a really interesting question. Can a person in the 21st century be effective without holding public office and having a voice? And I think you can. I think you can have, you know, a positive impact on what's happening in the country or the culture. But going out and getting, you know, 20% of the vote in Oregon and say, I'm tree planting, ain't going to work. At least not for me. Now, Beth's going to Portland, Oregon tomorrow, and maybe she can plant a few trees when she's out there. But look, it's not even the fact that it's tough odds. My first election was impossible. My second one, I was the only Republican to beat an incumbent in the country. Running for governor, I think I was the first non-statewide candidate that won an election against an incumbent in 100 years. I mean, I'm not worried about odds, but I have to have a sense in my mind that there really is a way for me to get there. And when I don't see that, then I feel as though it's not the most effective or best way for me to proceed. Again, though, I don't close the option on anything, because who knows what the heck is going to happen in this country. Yes, sir.
So our Governor Sununu has embraced what he calls the creative community. and he's raised funding for the arts. From your experience, and can you talk about your experience in Ohio and what you found in Ohio about the creative community that made you support it? And are there some things that could be on the national level if you found yourself in that position?
Well, you know, it's funny. My wife, just yesterday, we went for a walk, and she said that she ran a program called Spotlight. And this was a program where she featured artists from around Ohio, some of whom were really, really good. And they just went to her yesterday and said, would you start the program again, because there's nobody doing it, and she's going to do it. Yeah, as a Republican, as a conservative, people thought I would be anti-art. This is why the Republicans are doing so well. They don't have young people, college-educated, minorities. They're really doing fantastic. But we believed in the arts, and I believe in them because of the nature of the creative mind, and not just you know, painting, but sculpture and music, and now my music taste, you know, I kind of like Drake and people like that, so I don't know, it's not Tchaikovsky so much, but yeah, I believe that it's really important because the art speaks to the soul, and the soul is a very important part of how we function as human beings. And I'm glad to hear that Chris Sununu's doing that. It's an important part. But what we tried to do in the state, and this is what I think has to happen in the country, is that we didn't want to leave anybody behind. If we did a tax cut for people at the top, we made sure that we gave tax relief to those who are the working poor. I expanded Medicaid because I thought that the mentally ill and the drug addicted needed help, and people that didn't have health insurance. I mean, can you imagine, put yourself in somebody else's shoes. I have no health care. What, are you kidding me? So we did that, and it sent a message to people that we're all included, we're all part of this. We dealt with the issue of race. At the end, trying to deal with reasonable gun control. It was a program, a 360 program designed to communicate. One is we have to have jobs, we have to have work, we have to balance our budget, you have to have our books, we need to run some surpluses, but at the end, everybody in our state needs to feel as though they matter and they're important. And that's the thing I'm proudest of, because that's what I think we got accomplished there, which is why my re-election went so well. Yes, sir.
Do you think that there are any people presently holding public office who legitimately share the thoughts and expressions you mentioned today, and if so, would you feel comfortable mentioning their names?
I'd have to give that a whole lot of thought and go through the lists, but I think that right now I've been disappointed with my party because fundamentally of what happened with health care when they tried to yank health care away from 20 million Americans, and there were not many that stood up to say no, and I think they should have. A few did, and particularly my buddy John McCain, and God rest his soul. The Democrats have kind of moved hard left and think government is an answer, and I think we're kind of wandering around in a space where we will see good leaders emerge over time. But yeah, there's some good ones out there, but I'm not actively involved in like figuring out who's in the United States Senate or who's. It's just not what I do now. But there are people that are out there that I see in my legislature who I like, and but in terms of going through an all-star list, I think I'll pass on that and give it more thought the next time I'm asked. Yes.
What are some things that
let me just say one other thing about that. What I'm disappointed in is that we don't have the leaders that are trying to tell the general flock how to behave. You know, not enough leaders saying, knock it off. So when I ran the Budget Committee, which was one of the toughest committees to run because it was so ideological, you know, we had Republican plans, got Democrat plans, and I can remember going into the budget meetings and the guys would say, look, the Democrats are going to offer stuff here, let's listen to them for an hour and shut them down. We get on with this. I want to go home tonight. And I said, not only are we not going to do that, we're going to listen to them until the cows come home. We're going to let them win something, too. I don't hear that today. I hear tribalism out of both parties. Both parties are the same way. I talk about the invective this morning from this senator who was attacking Nancy Pelosi. I think about some of the vile language that comes out of some of the Democrat leaders. It's appalling to me. I mean, what the hell are we doing? We're in this not to be Republicans or Democrats, but to be Americans. And so we need to have more people rise up to say, that's not appropriate. And you have some fine leaders. Look, I didn't agree. I thought Paul Ryan found himself in a difficult place. But Paul's a good guy. You get a guy up here that comes up here, Chris Shays, every once in a while. Terrific, one of the best. I was just with a guy that came in to see me over the weekend, Tim Penny, who I had worked with. He's now an independent. I love the guy. I admire him. I respect him. But we're not seeing those people emerge right now. And you know why? Because when you stand up and you take on conventional wisdom, you get attacked. Now, either it frightens you or you say, tough. It doesn't bother me that you're attacking me, because I'm doing what I want to do. But it's not easy to do, sir, and everybody wasn't born to do things like that. It's difficult for people to do that. For me, my mother, she gets all the blame for the way I am, because she was highly opinionated, and I guess all I'm suggesting to you is I'd like to see more people be willing to stand up and take a punch. And lately, it's been Romney. He's taken a punch. Good. What else are you going to do with your life? You know? Spend all your time at Lake Winnipesaukee? Although that's not a bad idea. Maybe Okay, yes, miss. Go ahead.
I guess what are some things that you wish that people from both sides would understand about each other?
Well, you understand about
each other.
About each other?
Different political.
Well, look at you, sweetheart. Look at you. You had the courage to ask a question like that, huh?
I thought I just wanted to.
Yeah. Yeah. So you know what? You know what I think they need to know? What is your name?
Sarah.
Sarah, you know what they need to know? Every single person was made by God, and we are to love one another. It doesn't mean we have to agree. It doesn't mean we have to be mushy and all that. It means we have to say, well, you're special. Sarah, you're special. You're a special girl, and what can I do to know you and help you and like you?
Well, I'd love to tell you all about me afterwards.
Yeah, but you know why? Because that's what everybody wants to be listened to. Everybody wants to be treated with respect. Everybody wants to be heard. Everybody has hopes and dreams, right? And so that's a really special question. And you know those hopes and dreams you have? Don't give them up. And what we got to do is find other people that want to help your hopes and dreams come true. Who is this with you? You're a mom. You got a special mom, don't you? Okay. Anything else, folks? Okay. Yes, ma'am.
I respect that running for president is very, very difficult. But I was wondering why you felt in 2016 with that competitive field there was a path forward, but this time there is not a path forward.
Well, because I looked at the field and thought I could beat them all, and I was damn close, you know, to being able to do it. Look, this time I listened to people who are my friends who particularly live here. And you know what they tell me? No path. We're walking on the same path you are, and we can't see how to... We're walking on the same trail that you are, and we see no path. It's pretty locked down. And if you look around the country now, Republicans are in some states, they're even eliminating primaries. So everybody has to assess, you know, on an individual, what's your chance? And so my assessment at this point in time is there is no chance, right? I mean, it's not that there's no chance, there's not a path, but I can't tell you about what the future will bring. I just don't know. So it's like, even though I'm telling you I'm not doing anything now, hell, I'm doing a lot of things now, it's just I'm not filing for president up here in New Hampshire in 8 days. Okay? Yes, sir.
Part of my cynicism is that you talked about the path, and I'd like some answers on some questions. I assume the first problem we have with that path is money.
Sure.
I assume the second problem is somebody sat down and explained, if you go that now, you'll never play on this team again.
What team? Which team is that?
The Republicans.
Oh, well, let me get that one out of the way. Yeah. Okay.
Things aren't right. Everybody knows it. That's why we're all here. Things aren't right. You know, if not now, when? You know, this is the essence of the leadership. Is you pick a time when things are not, you know, when you will be not getting praise. That's one of the things I actually like about Warren. She fought the banks and she earned no friends for it, but she did it anyway because she thought it was right. So that's the essence of leadership. So this is the essence of leadership. You know,
Yeah.
you do it even though you gain no friends and you're not going to play for the team again, and nobody's going to help you out with the money, which is very important.
Well, sir, first of all, yeah. Well, let me just respond to you. First of all, I don't want to be taking a Greyhound bus from Columbus, Ohio to New Hampshire. It doesn't work very well that way, so let's be practical, too. You can be cynical, but let's be practical. If you cannot raise the money, you can't compete. And since you take a look at these races, you see that they always put people at the top who raise the most amount of money. And I will tell you this, I have found that most people who have money don't want to make a winner, they want to be with a winner, okay? But that wouldn't stop me if I thought there was actually a path, because I'd figure out a way to get the money, the same way I had no money the last time. Now, in terms of making my team mad, I'm not sure which team you're talking about, because I've been making that, quote, team mad for 2.5 years. I didn't go to the convention in my own state. I didn't endorse, let me finish now. Let me finish. I didn't endorse him for president. I've been not personally attacking him, but highly critical of his policies for the entire time. Now, you may, I mean, I can't tell you how to think, but I can tell you from my perspective, there's not a path right now. So I can go on a Greyhound bus and come here and wander around and, you know, and hold a sign, the end is near and all that. That's not the approach that I'm taking now. Because I don't think the end is near. I think that there is a beginning here. It's just not the path that you would have me or somebody else do. But in terms of the Republican Party, it better change. And I have a right to say what I think it means to be a Republican and a conservative. And in fact, I'd like to shape it in my direction. And I'm working now to shape it in my direction with a group of others. But I don't recognize this party, not the party I belong to. Now, let me also tell you, when I ran for president, I said at the time we should not rip up the Iran nuclear deal. I was the only one on the stage to say it. I was the only one that I can recall that said, there might have been one other, I thought the whole time about expanding Medicaid. I never shrunk from it. I said that immigration needed to be fixed and we shouldn't ship 11 million people out of this country. I was the only one that I can think of on the stage. Maybe Jeb was there with me too. So it wasn't any of those things or being afraid of the party or anything. It's a calculation about the chances of my being able to deliver something that I think would be constructive. Yes, sir.
So I haven't read the book yet, but you know, you focus a lot on what individuals can do and kind of 10 ideas for what people can do. But there are a lot of things that need to be addressed as a society, as a world, collectively, through government typically. And I'm wondering how, like, if you could flesh out a little bit how you think the things that individuals can do kind of can add up to addressing our big societal problems.
Well, I mean, first of all, as I said earlier, you can't name me, I don't think you can, maybe you can, I could change my position, one single big thing that happened in America that the public didn't drive. Let's start with some of them. Civil rights. When Martin Luther King went to see JFK, he left a very disappointed man. Kennedy didn't care. It was only because of King and the marching and the protests and the beatings that people took that it happened. I just got done watching a movie on William Wilberforce. The only reason that happened is it came from the ground up, okay, the religious movement. It was a big chunk of it. Women's suffrage. Do you know how long it took women to get the right to vote? And then African-American women, it took them another 40 years or whatever it was to be able to get the right to vote, 20 years, whatever. I don't have my dates right. Ending the Vietnam War. They weren't ending the Vietnam War from the top down. The generals didn't say, well, this isn't working out. In fact, if you read Westmoreland's testimony, it was all going great, right? It was because the college campuses exploded. And so what are we worried about today? We're worried about the environment. They're not going to, they haven't moved anything right now in the world. It's going to take this. People saying, knock it off and do something, which takes collective action. So you can start a movement like Greta has, or you can join a movement, or you can decide to support somebody who's out there who's driving some good social cause. But I know that sounds like you want to think, okay, this person's going to come in and they're going to get all this done. I tried to pass a red flag law in Ohio, which was a legitimate way to take guns out of the hands of people who were mentally unstable. You know why I didn't get it done? Because nobody showed up on the grounds of the State House. What happened was the person who was the gun owner yelled loud enough to scare the legislators, and nothing happened. If I'd have had 10,000 people, 5,000 people show up on the grounds of the Ohio State House, it would have passed. But because the public didn't get behind it, it didn't work. And there's a lot of reasons for that. So what I would say is, you want to be part of a movement, you want to create a movement, because there's strength in numbers, no question about it. But everybody doesn't want to do that. Some people just want to go help their neighbor. Some people just want to go work at the food bank. To me, is that big? I think it's very big. But we're sort of like, if we don't see, I'm rooting for the Red Sox, and you know, a guy just hit a home run, but I'm waiting for a grand slam, and if I don't get a grand slam, that isn't that great. You know, yes, it is great. And these little things matter because that's what flows up. And look, maybe I'm wrong, but I only held elected office for 30 years, and I've only been around it for 40. But that's my judgment. Yes, sir.
So today in the U.S., we have a $1 trillion deficit.
Oh, yeah, this year.
$1 trillion debt.
I think 22 now.
Is anybody serious about addressing this? Is anybody talking?
No, you know why not? Because nobody cares about it. There's no, I mean, look, when I was offering this stuff, nobody cared about it either, but I just drove people crazy, and they begin to realize, oh, yeah. I mean, my first vote on the Kasich budget was 405 to 30, and I had the 30. Okay? And half of those were Democrats that I played basketball with who didn't want me to be embarrassed. And the way this works is they have a vote up here on this board, and the green there were 30 green, and there were 405 no. And then the next year, it was like I had 89 votes. But every year, I got more and more, and then the public kind of moved in that direction. Maybe that was a case where, I don't think I was leading the public, but the public kind of got tired of it. They're going to get tired of this. Because what it's going to do is it's going to suffocate our children. You know that. There will be the chickens will come home to roost, according to one preacher that I'd heard of. They're going to come home to roost. But right now, have you ever heard anybody talk about the debt? Have you ever heard anybody talk about spending? So if that's not what they're talking about, what are the politicians going to do? Because the politicians get their orders from you.
One
Yes,
more, and then we got to
yes,
go.
sir.
All right, one more.
Thank you, Governor, for coming to New Hampshire, sharing your thoughts with us. Quick question. You talked a lot about membership, people, behavior today. I have more of a narrow policy question. You talked about healthcare a little bit, the economy and economics a little bit, the environment. What is the one policy gap or the widest policy gap that you think Congress should be addressing right now? What's the number one priority in your opinion?
Debt. The debt.
The debt.
Because it's like a tsunami. It's out here, but it's coming. But the other thing that has to be addressed, in my opinion, is health care. And let me, you're just a young man. You don't have a family, right?
I have a 16-year-old daughter.
Oh.
But thank you.
You look so young. Okay, so I don't know what I'm going to tell you what my situation is at home. Health care for me and for my wife and my twin daughters, $30,000 a year, okay? And my two daughters and my wife have a $5,000 deductible. So it's possible, God forbid, that's $45,000. Who's got $45,000 to spend on this? I mean, this is really, really tough. And there is a way out of it, but the way out of it is not Medicare for all. We're going to rip all this stuff out. 171 million Americans are going to lose. It's crazy. Craziness, okay? And if that's the direction the Democrats go, Trump will probably be reelected. I mean, if they go for this extremist stuff, because you just saw the results on Tuesday. The candidates who had the most constructive, reasonable proposals, take Kentucky. Bashir said, we're going to fix the system. We're not going to, we're not going to rip it out. We're going to fix it. The answer to this is to pay, largely, is to pay for performance. When we actually ran a program like this in the state, we paid primary care doctors a bonus for keeping people healthy and giving them high quality and high satisfaction. And it saved money. And we had total transparency. So, do you ever go to a doctor?
As little as possible.
Yeah. Do you ever ask your doctor, what's that cost?
I get the statement after the fact.
I didn't ask you that. So you don't know how good your doctor is. You don't know what it costs to go to the doctor, and yet you go. Isn't that pretty wacky when you think about it? But we all do that. I never ask, okay, what does this thing cost? But if we had transparency, we would know what things cost. And here's the other key. If a doctor can be paid, a primary care doctor can be paid for quality and lower costs, then when the doctor picks a specialist, the doctor will pick a specialist who will be of high quality and lower prices. Because we paid bonuses. Now, low prices without quality doesn't work. And bad quality at low prices sometimes is what we have. So why don't we search for a system that uses the market to drive high quality at lower prices? And I think this is a big answer to this problem, what I've just outlined for you. I think that and the debt, and then how about one other thing that stands, I guess, above everything else? Can you just put the country first and not your party? Okay? I think that's an answer. So, okay, I guess we're done.
We got to go. Thank you all very much, and you can sign some books if they want to buy them.
Thank you all for coming. Okay, thank you.